Monday, March the 16th, 2020. We have several items on our agenda tonight and probably just as much to talk about under other when we actually get down to that portion. But today we're going to start off the meeting with the Cass County Public Library. I want to invite Hannah and Dan to tell us a little bit about their proposal. It's going to be on the April ballot.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm Dan Brower. I'm the Assistant Director for Cass County Public Library, and this is Hannah Bittner. She is the branch manager at the Northern Resource Center, which is in Belton but serves Belton, Raymore, and Peculiar. And our board has elected to put a 12-cent increase on the April 7th ballot, which hopefully we have an okay turnout because of everything going on. So it would be a 12-cent increase on our property tax levy. A lot of people ask, why are you asking for money? The first reason is it's been 35 years. Our last tax increase was in 1985. And as you all may be familiar, the Hancock Amendment reduces tax rates when property values go up. So our tax rate has actually decreased by 32%, while the population in the county has doubled, and costs of goods and services haven't increased either, because I don't think they ever do. Excuse me. For example, in 1985, we didn't even have a technology budget, and now everything is on the computers. Besides the fact that the population has doubled in 35 years, it's also projected to grow another 20% in the next 20 years. And a lot of that is actually up here in Raymore and Belton in the northern part of the county. So when you look at our tax rate compared to neighboring libraries, you have your Kansas City and your Mid-Continent. They're at 40 cents and 55 cents, and we're way down at 13.7. And we compare ourselves to Mid-Continent and Kansas City a lot because they're our neighbors. Honestly, we're never going to be a Mid-Continent or a Kansas City. They serve 500,000 or 800,000 people, and we don't serve that many people, and their tax rate is much higher. But if you look at other systems or other libraries like Henry County in Clinton, they're at 20 cents. Rich Hill down in Bates County is at 24 cents, and Trails Regional to our east in Warrensburg and Odessa, they're at 26 cents. So this kind of gives you a comparison of our neighboring libraries. And a copy of the chart, a smaller version, is on the back side of the fact sheet that everyone should have. So 93% of our money comes from local property taxes. That's 93% of our budget. The other percentage is from donations, fines and fees, some grants, and state aid, which is never guaranteed because sometimes they withhold, and libraries aren't guaranteed that, so we don't really budget that in. So most of the money is very local, and we provide local services. So what do? We improve quality of life. We had over 900,000 visits last year to our branches, and if you break that down per capita, that's basically 10 visits per resident, which is pretty impressive. We have programs for the youngest and the oldest in our community. We have early literacy story times. We have teen programming. We had almost 29,000 children and teens attend programs in 2018. And we had 3,800 families participate in summer reading. Summer reading has been really great for us every year, and we can't have that without the generous donations and support of area businesses and organizations. And of course, we have a story time at every branch at least once a week. Another important thing that libraries provide that we have done our very best is to provide access to technology. We have 112 computers system-wide. 81 of them are available to the public, and they're all running Windows 7. I'm sure you all have heard that Microsoft no longer supports Windows 7, so we're going to have to upgrade all of those. We also need to upgrade our bandwidth. Our Wi-Fi was used over 15,000 times in the county, and that was from people bringing in their own devices. Some of our branches, our Wi-Fi has actually surpassed our computer use. This is an absolute need. There are times when I'm sitting at my computer and the administration shares the building with the Harrisonville branch, and I can't load websites because there's so many people on our computers using our internet. So it's obvious a need, even in our smaller, more rural areas where we may only have 5 megabits connection. That's the only thing they can get. So we had 1,800 programs for our adults last year, and we had almost 1,000 seniors receive tax help from AARP in 2018. And actually, last year, we reached over 1,000. And AARP comes in with tax experts, and they help seniors file their taxes, and people with low income as well. So it's a really great service that I'm glad that we can provide at Harrisonville and NRC. So this is what the ballot question language will be. I'm not going to read all of it because it's on the handout and it's there. But basically, we want to improve technology. We want to maintain programs and increase programs. We want to increase our collections, and we want to provide facilities for all of our locations. So I mentioned the technology and I mentioned the bandwidth, but we also want to have individual branch improvements throughout the county. Most of our branches need new carpet. They need upgraded lighting. They need more comfortable furniture. We want our branches to be places where people feel safe and comfortable. We want to have study spaces and meeting spaces if possible. We don't own any of our buildings, so we rent, so we'll have to work with our landlords on that. But for the most part, our landlords have been really good. And then we would like to increase hours at branches or expand more into more services like streaming video or more ebooks, more e-audiobooks. In 2017, we sent out a survey, and people wanted a ton of stuff. And when we were creating our strategic plan, the board looked at what people wanted and needed with the resources we had, and they realized we can't do it. So that's the second reason why the board has asked for this. And then, of course, we want to expand services. We'd like to explore things like there's homebound services. We can have more early literacy programs. We can have more things available for checkout. And then we want to focus on our collections. We're a lot more than books, but as you all know, we're really good at books. So we want to increase our physical and our digital collections. And that also includes research databases, which were used like 25,000 times last year. So that is very much a need. So how much will it cost me? Everyone always asks that. So on the median value of a home in Cass County last year, which was $158,000, it'll be $3 a month or $36 a year. But that's basically the price of a gallon of milk. And if you look at it by the year, it's about the price of a large print book that a library would have for people to check out. So what happens if Proposition L does not pass? Well, we'll have to delay those technology updates. We'll have to offer fewer events. We'll have to buy fewer materials and resources. We won't be able to make the improvements at all the branches that we need to. And we may have to reduce hours. There's that last one on there, which I hate talking about, but it's always in the back of our minds. I mean, we might have to close a branch, but I don't want to close a branch. But in order to do that, we'll have to reduce hours elsewhere so that we can still have service throughout the county. So for more information, you can go to cascolibrary.org/election, and that has a lot more than I've told you here. But I am happy to open it up to any questions. We can do our best to answer them.
Thank you, Dan. You know, a year ago, we got together and your survey team met with me, and we talked about a lot of the things that were needed at the library. Of course, the main one being maintenance. We know that you were struggling with the current budget and getting those accomplished. I'm very excited about the expansion of services that for the same amount of money we talked about a year ago, you were going to be able to provide with this ballot issue. And I really like the way you guys have laid it out and told the public what we're going to be able to keep and how we're going to be able to increase and expand services as well, which I thought was very important for this sizable enough, because you're basically doubling the amount of the tax levy which wasn't much to begin with, don't get me wrong, and I understand that. And as Chris Turnbow, the mayor of the city of Raymore, I'm fully in support of this proposition. So I know that our council might not be able to, as a group, support that issue, but individually, I think you're going to see several people within the group that will come out and support you for that. And with that, I would ask anybody on the council if they have any questions for Dan or Hannah at this time. Yes, sir, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Excellent job on educating us on the proposed ballot language. I just had a general question currently today, given everything that's going on in the media. Family and I, we recently answered some surveys from the school district on if they were to extend the school absence, beyond just the spring break that they're on now, do they have access to the internet if they had to go to some web-based learning methodology? I know our daughter's home on school because they're sent away from college for extended periods. So capacity today, if kids and students, had to come into the library to utilize the facilities, how much do you have the capacity? What impact would you have in that surge on your visitors into the?
Well, it's timely that you brought that up because actually all of our branches are closing starting tomorrow and will be hopefully reopen on April 6th. But for our two northern branches, or our two biggest branches, Harrisonville and the Northern Resource Center, we have a fair amount of space. We have a lot of online resources that they can use. We don't have as much space as we'd like. I don't think anyone has as much space as they'd like. But after school, we have a lot of kids who come and use our resources, use our space, and just, it's a place where they can be safe and they can get together and, not cause trouble. Yeah, it's, if we were staying open, we would be able to have them, but for the interest of the health of our communities, we did have to decide to close.
Gotcha. And
so.
I did, that slipped my mind. I did see your post today regarding the libraries closing on that time frame. So, but excellent. I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Jacobson.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman Townsend. This is an excellent presentation. So this may be a bit of a redundant question, but in looking at what you're asking for and what you're hoping for, and based on what I just heard about, it seems like like a lot of public entities, it's kind of hard to stay on top or stay ahead. How does this, let's say this passes, how does that satisfy your needs? I mean, in terms of, okay, now we've got what our needs are, we've actually been able to shoot out a little bit in terms of getting ahead, because it's always tough to play from behind.
Absolutely. We've been doing that for quite a few years now. That is a great question because when we went into our strategic planning process and surveyed people, we didn't want to just catch up. We wanted to catch up, maintain, and be able to extend more. So with this, we should be able to bring Cass County Public Library on par with other similar libraries with the services that we can offer, expanding outreach, materials to check out, digital services. But we also want to explore new services that, hey, maybe Mid-Continent and Kansas City aren't doing, something that sets Cass County apart, because I think Cass County is a unique place, and I think we can offer things that they don't. So what this will do is it will provide us the resources to catch up, reach out a little bit, and our board has been very good as to not go into debt. And I do believe that they will invest in the future and have a capital plan if this passes. Because like I said, we rent all our buildings, and while renting is great for some things, it's not for others. And it would be really great to eventually see a county library where we're not renting every place and that people talk about Cass County Library.
Excellent, thank you. And I'll second the mayor's comments from earlier as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anna, do you have anything to add?
Dan's done a really good job. I just have to agree.
Okay, all right.
I will speak to what Mr. Townsend said just a little bit. We do have plenty of table space for students to be in. If we're open and the schools are closed past when we reopen, everyone is more than welcome to be there. In order to access our resources online, they need to already have a library card. We will be working behind the scenes at the library, so we're still able to take email, answer questions on Facebook. So if people are wanting to get access but don't know how, please contact us through the ways you normally do.
Okay.
And I answer the Ask a Librarian email, which is asklib@cascolibrary.org. So if you know anyone who doesn't have a library card but needs to access just our digital resources, send an email to there. We can sign them up for, we haven't done this in about a year, but because of everything going on, we want people to have access. So we can sign them up for basically an internet-only card so they can access those tools.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Good to know. All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'll leave a stack of my cards if you don't already have my contact information, and good luck with everything.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Anna. Next item on our agenda, you also have a handout for, and that's for the Census 2020. Mr. Fearborn, I'll turn it over to you.
And I'm going to delay here for just a second till Ms. Harmer gets to the table.
Okay.
And she will be making the presentation on Census 2020 with the total support of Ms. Jardou, who's sitting in the back row of the council chambers. Coming up now.
Oh, thank you. We don't have a presentation. This will be really fast and succinct. I just wanted, we just wanted to let you know, I mean, obviously some other topics are taking over our communications with our residents right now, but when we feel the times are appropriate, we will continue to share information encouraging our residents to complete the census online. We do have some new developments as libraries are closed. We originally stated in our press release that went out last week that you could go to a library to complete the census online. And we also know that census workers will be delayed in getting to people's homes, which was going to start May 1st. So we'll continue to ask our residents to complete the census online. I've already gotten 2 notifications at my house. So I went ahead and completed that today so I wouldn't have to receive any more. And eventually we'll share other tools we have. There will be an online kind of real-time map
visualization
of the people who have responded. So maybe we can have some friendly wagers with our neighboring communities and who can have the highest number the fastest. And just the pieces I put in front of you are what Katie had gathered up. Just it does cost when people do not reply. So if anyone asks you, please encourage them and just look over this. It really does benefit several programs that I know that are beneficial, and obviously schools, roads, hospitals. So that's really it. We're just going to continue to push out that information as when the time is right and when we're not pushing out other current communications. So do you have anything to add, Katie?
Sorry, one quick thing. In the 2010 census, Missouri did lose a representative at the state, so it is important to make sure that everyone is counted.
Well, I think the 2 pieces of paper that you provided us with information tonight, a couple of really important answers. It was to the one, well, why should the census matter to you? Talks about the large portions of the budget that are determined by the census to include 16 large federal programs that rely on the census data. I assume this is on our website as well, this information, or at least under a census
There's a
tab or something.
I have general information in our press release on our website,
Okay.
but I can add these documents to
Yeah,
that.
that'd be awesome, because I think it really does succinctly outline the reasons for people's need to participate in the census this year. Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious, my mom called me today. She got 2 as well. Why are they sending 2? Is that,
They want you to get it done.
oh, okay, all right.
Residents will receive up to 4 Well, originally, the plan was you'll receive 4 notices before somebody knocks on your door. So they're just encouraging people to do it before they send a worker out to
And I can do
collect in
hers,
person.
right? Because she can't get online. She didn't know how to get online, so I can, yeah, all right, good. Because she's called me every day about it, so like,
Okay. Anyone else have a question or comment? Okay, well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Next item on our agenda is an update on the I-49 widening project.
Thank you, Your Honor. Wanted to alert the council to some of the developments on the 58 Highway Bridge and I-49 widening project, and we're specifically looking for a thumbs up, thumbs down from you all tonight on the portion of it that's the I-49 widening project. As you may remember, we had been working feverishly on the staff level efforts that are needed for the federal build grant that we're going to be submitting which is specifically to widening I-49. At the same time that we did that, we submitted to the governor's office. The governor had instituted a matching grant with MoDOT program, and that was specifically targeted to the bridge project and widening the bridge or doing something to provide better access at the bridge. The governor's office released the grant awards that were associated with that. Raymore was unfortunately not on that list. The good news is that we're not stopping. The governor's office has announced that even though we were curious if that particular program was instituted by the governor because it was an election cycle year for the governor's office, it turns out that he is planning on continuing that grant into next year. We will be reapplying next year. A view of the grant awardees was just a very interesting and very targeted group of awardees. The one who got, the awardee who got basically, I'm going to call it our money, was actually the city of Lee Summit. You may remember that the governor's grant was for economic development purposes if it could be shown that it would lead to that. Lee Summit had actually already received grant award for their project from MARC. It was an $8 million grant award through the MARC funding, but they applied to get duplicative money, not to supplement that money from the state, and they were actually given this. We'll be very curious to see what MARC now does with the $8 million that we're hoping Lee Summit turns back over to them to go back into that particular program. But we are going to reapply, do a better job in that application. We have also learned that a number of communities across the United States actually apply for and win back-to-back build grants. That's not stopped, and a lot of times those back-to-back grants are kind of for homogeneous projects like this one particular one is. They take a look at that very closely. We have reached the point on the I-49 build grant, so just wanted to update you on the 58 highway portion of this. And of course, our bond issue we'll be recommending to the council that a significant number of dollars from our bond issue go towards contributing to that particular project as well. Good news on the build grant for I-49 widening is we have gotten with MoDOT, and the cost for that has gone down considerably in their estimates. We have now reached the point, though, where staff has hit its limits, and there are a number of items that we need to bring in outside help for, specifically the economic development impacts and the final engineering that would be associated with those. The city of Raymore, on behalf of the county and Belton, with their knowledge, put out an RFQ for services. We are prepared to make recommendation to award HDR those particular services. HDR has by far the highest number of successful build grants that have been submitted to the federal government that they have signed off on. It was a very good proposal on their part. HDR is also doing the work with the city of Belton on the grant that they actually received from MARC for highway access associated with this widening. That we met with Cass County and the city of Belton last week, and they are on board with bringing to their elected officials, and of course the elected officials for the county were in the room, a cost share agreement between the three groups. It would be for $65,000 for each group. We do have funding sources here for that. Belton has some funding sources, and so does the county. We will be sharing the cost share agreement with them tomorrow. The county anticipates taking it before the commissioners next Tuesday, I believe, and Belton is also next Tuesday. If the council gives a thumbs up tonight, putting it on the agenda for Monday, we would be on Monday. We would have it on as an emergency read. We are going to try to make, and HDR thinks they can do this without rushing it, we're going to try to make this year's cycle for the build grant. If we don't make it, everything will still be in place for next year's cycle. We will have by then, I am sure, passed the bond issue, and so everything will be in place for either one of those years. But if we could get the council's thumbs up tonight to put it on the agenda, if there were any objections to that, or questions, we could talk them through with you all.
Well, and one of the reasons is that we have a May 15th deadline. Did you mention that?
Absolutely. The bill grant needs to be submitted by May 15th, which is why when speaking with the mayor, and as a matter of fact, the mayor said it at the meeting, that he would be more than willing to put this on as an emergency read.
Kind of crunching them down here. They haven't even gotten started yet. Mr. Holman.
Just see if I've got this correct. You have a firing point solution, sir. Flood the tubes, open the outer doors. Thank you.
That's pretty good.
I'm going to take that as a thumbs up.
Anyone else? Thumbs up around? Everybody good? Okay, cool.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. And the next item is our City Hall tower, not the radio tower out back, but the brick tower out front. And we'd like to talk about some emergency work having to be taking place there. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Mr. Icky.
Thank you, sir. As the mayor had mentioned, there is a growing situation with the tower itself. If you've noticed walking by, there are a number of cracks and several bricks at the very top that have heaved out. Nothing has fallen, is not presented yet a safety issue, but we fear that that could be the next step in this process. To give you just a very quick history of what the work that has been done on this tower already, was constructed back in 2002 as part of the building. In about 2013, the public works staff discovered that the roof was leaking and the concrete bands, there's the white concrete bands kind of at the mid and the top, were deteriorating very quickly, and that water was getting into the structure itself. And so they had to remove the concrete bands, they had to remove the roofing, but unfortunately the water had already done its damage. In 2014, Engineering Associates was hired to do a structural analysis because the building itself was sinking and tilting into the building. As part of that recommendation, the council approved a work stabilization plan which peered the tower itself and made the tower stable. And so, you know, structurally, the tower itself is very stable, but in this process, as we had a structural engineer a couple weeks ago come out and take a look at the tower most recently, in that process of when it sank, the tower leaned and twisted at the top slightly, and so there was some cracking to the bricks that we would not have seen at the time. Over time, from 2015 until now, water has gotten into those cracks, as well as behind the brick facade. And to kind of give you an idea, the structure of the tower itself is just a cinder block structure that is wrapped in the bricking. And so there's just a small enough space back there that the water has been able to get back in there, freeze, thaw, and over the several years now has created this situation where you can see the picture on the left. There is significant cracking along this corner edge. So if you're essentially standing on the front patio and looking straight up, this was at the beginning of February. And unfortunately, this photo doesn't do it justice on the projector, but this crack, which has gone from the top and stop about here, now goes at the top and goes all the way down to that concrete band. So we know that it is getting worse in the cold weather. Luckily, now that we're getting into warmer weather, we don't worry as much about that freeze and thaw issue. The main culprit behind this is because of that space behind the brick and between the brick and the cinder block, there were supposed to be these weep holes essentially where water could leak out and we wouldn't have this issue. Unfortunately, back in 2002 when the tower was constructed, it was built with too few of the weep holes. It only has weep holes on 2 sides of the tower at the bottom. And it was also using this practice of kind of this rope that was placed in between the brick and the theory being that the water would be wicked away by this rope and would leak out the bottom. It is done, unfortunately, just the opposite. It now just holds water behind the brick. So there are a couple of options we have looked at, and as I said, we had a structural engineer look at the tower, and we also had an architect come out and take a look at the tower just to give us some options. The structural engineer did indicate that based on the piering that had been done with the previous recommendation, the new concrete slabs still look intact and all the caulking and work around the base of the tower looked intact. It is structurally stable, and so he was not as concerned. One of the options is that we could fully repair the tower. We would take all of the brick off that is coming off, we would make the repairs to the cinder blocks inside, and we would re-brick the tower with a new facade. This unfortunately comes with a couple of downsides. One, the brick would be visibly different. Even if we were just to take, so first option within this option, we could take just the deteriorating brick and replace it. Well, now we'd have 2 shades of a red brick on the same tower. The other option, and this is what would cost roughly $100,000, is we could take all of the brick off the tower and completely repair and fix the entire tower. And that's kind of the rough estimate that we received. But again, the tower would then look different from the rest of the building. There's also no guarantee that in the future that we wouldn't have this same problem again with the brick cracking at the top and kind of during that freeze-thaw process. The second option, and Ms. Harmer will have to not laugh at my terrible photoshopping skills here, is that we could remove the top half of the tower. If you go out and look out front, you notice that there's a kind of a concrete band right at about the roof level to the rest of the City Hall building. Everything below that concrete band is still in good shape. We're not seeing the kind of freeze and thaw heaving. And so another recommendation was that we could remove the top half just above the City of Raymore sign, and then we could completely fix the interior and place a new roof on top that would be much easier to reach and maintain, where we would be able to maintain half the tower, still maintain that front signage, also at a much more reasonable price compared to option 1. The third option, and this was just kind of an off-the-wall idea, was we could take the entire tower down, remove the sign out front, and then we could continue kind of the architectural theming that we have created between Centerview and the rack of the exposed metal, the dark painted metal, and the wood element feature, and we could completely replace the front entrance and remake it to look and emulate a little bit closer to what some of our other public facilities look like. If we were looking at kind of what kind of a schedule we would be encountering, if we were to completely repair the tower, staff would recommend we'd need to at least remove the brick from the top and make sure that it's safe so that nothing falls. But unfortunately, with that price tag, we would need to place it into the CIP, so work would not begin until another winter. So as I said, we'd kind of have a work in progress through the winter. If we were to remove the top half, we do have an estimate, and we've been able to scope out the work, so we would be able to begin that work this summer as part of the concrete project already approved by council to replace the front steps and the sidewalks and curbs. And so we'd be able to work those projects simultaneously. If we were to completely replace the tower, that would be unknown. We weren't able to get a price or really any idea, but just kind of an idea of what we are looking at from a timetable. Staff's recommendation at this point is that we bring the tower halfway down. Most expedient, also maintains the look and feel of the front of the building. Also is something that we know would be within at least the scope of work that we could do this summer to make it safe and also still aesthetically match the building. I'm open to any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Sarko?
Yeah, watching the presentation, doing the 50,000 to the 100,000, and the 100,000 doesn't guarantee down the road you're not putting a long-term Band-Aid on the project. Removing half being able to access that into the years to come for maintenance. And with that ban, I think would be the best viable move here. I think save the money, do the right job, get it knocked down, and in the future, you can actually maintenance it so it doesn't happen again. Where the other problem, you're stuck again. Can't maintenance it. If it happens, you have to tear it all out again. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking.
Anybody else? Mr. Holman?
If as you're walking out this evening, you will note that you're going to be seeing, you would see like chips of brick that are laying on the sidewalk that are coming from the top. If you're approaching the tower from the east and walking up the sidewalk and you look up to the point of about 15 to 20 feet down, you can actually see the twist in the tower now. It is that visible. So if the council were to take staff's recommendation to bring it down to the halfway point, and one of the reasons we like that one is it is what we feel a final solution to this, and we keep the iconic arch that most people identify with. We would request that the city manager be allowed to do that on an emergency basis, because it is becoming a safety issue and it's becoming a real issue of concern for the ladies in the finance office who would be the first to see the bricks if it did start to fall.
Yes, Mr. Holman?
I concur. I think we should take it halfway down. I would like for us to explore beyond that. I mean, we've got to take care of the emergency situation first, obviously, and remove the top half and make it safe. But I would like to see us perhaps explore what design alternatives we might have to better match both the rack and center view, and get some proposed cost on that in case we decided to do that as a capital project after the safety part of this is taken care of. I think we could at least look at it as an option to decide if that's where we want to go and if we want to spend the money.
Trying to do it, too.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mr. Barber?
Yeah, I concur. I think taking it down to the kind of level that allows still the look of the building other than I was going to ask, and Mr. Fairborn answered the question. I had a house one time that the chimney was doing that, and they came out and they stuccoed it, which basically seals everything in, and you don't have any of that water getting behind the brick and popping the brick off. But if the tower's twisted, it's already compromised. So I think to get rid of that, and like you said, since I've been on the council, this is the second go at doing this. I'd like for it to be the last go, so to speak. So,
Mr. Circo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And then you said you could actually start that project now. If we get the emergency reading, you can get on top of that with the sidewalk and the curbs and actually start working on it this summer?
Actually, I am requesting that it be considered an emergency and it does not come before the council even as an emergency. We need to begin the work immediately.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Dale, historically, it kind of runs in line with what we did out back, too. Remember, we lost the top 1/3 of the tower out there, kind of fixed it to keep it in place, too. I know, right?
Staff is
remember that.
Staff is actually trying to blame this on the fact that originally it was actually the bottom part of our flagpole. The tower out here, there was actually a flagpole as large as the one that sits in the ground that somebody had the idea that they would put that on there, and that lasted about, what, 2 months, sir?
Yeah, it didn't
Before
last
it
very long.
became an issue, so. Yeah, the interior of it is completely hollow, and there's a ladder that goes up to the top, so.
Okay, well, I think you've got the
Thank you, sir.
approval there. So, let's talk about the elephant in the room. So, literally, the big old coronavirus elephant. So, within the last couple of days, Mr. Fairborn and I have talked a lot about how we should be handling the potential emergency declaration, minimizing our meetings and so forth. And I think they've come up with a great plan. Just a minute ago, before I came into the meeting, I was contacted by Bob Houston, the presiding commissioner. They said we do have our first case in Cass County. It's in Drexel. It's been verified as of this afternoon. And so they will be declaring a state of emergency tomorrow at the county level, which kind of takes care of me having to make any of those kinds of declarations. But we do have a litany of propositions for securing and minimizing the effects, not only on the folks here at City Hall, but on our population as well, and some things that we can do to assist them in the way forward with regard to billing as well. So I will turn it over to Mr. Fearborn so we can talk about those things.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, would like to go through what is being done at the Parks and Rec level, what they have determined they are going to be doing. Centerview and the RAC, right now over at the RAC, there is the spring day camp is going on through Friday. That will continue and be closed out then at the end of this week. But for any of the public trying to access Centerview or the RAC, excuse me, those facilities are going to be closed through March 31st. I swear I swallowed wrong just a few minutes ago. The doors will be locked, signs will be posted, full-time staff will still be present. Part-time staff, obviously, if there's no programs going on, won't be needed at those locations. The outdoor restrooms are not set to open until March 31st. And of course, on March, the reason we're giving dates on everything is because I asked our staff to be very careful about that, because I feel like we need to give a bright line when we will be reevaluating these things and or opening these things up, because it leads to a lot of confusion if you just say you're going to do something and don't give a timeline on it. As far as programs are concerned, all the programs, leagues, and contracted activities are canceled until March 31st, when they'll be reevaluated. If persons wish to pull out of those, account credit or full refunds are available. This includes all yoga, fitness, et cetera. Fortunately, we're in a period where right now for the three sports, flag football, soccer, and volleyball, they are in practice mode, not play mode. So cancellation doesn't kill any of those just yet. The special events, the Friday Food Fest is canceled until March 31st. The Raymore Easter egg hunt is still to be determined because it's a ways out yet. We'll see where things are at in there, but we will be evaluating that on a regular basis. As you know, all of this is a changing reality each day. Yesterday it was 50 persons or less for the next 4 weeks. Today the CDC extended that to 8 weeks, and the president recommended 10 people or less. So we're just going to have to see each day where things go. But as of tonight, here's our reality. Centerview rentals. These are private rentals over there. No rentals with over 50 people in attendance, according to the CDC recommendations. Rentals under 50 people, we're going to let them know that we strongly encourage them not to have those, but if they wish to do that, they can. If they wish to pull out of those, obviously full refunds and credits, and or rescheduling a date after March 31st, again, to be reevaluated. Any questions on the park end of this? Great. Some other things that I am recommending this evening to the City Council. I call these COVID considerations. To be in conjunction and in support of the CDC's #1 recommendation, which is wash everything regularly, including your hands, your clothes, the surfaces in your home. To wash things takes water. To encourage people to not be afraid to use the extra water for one billing cycle the next 30 days, which we just completed a billing cycle, so it would apply to everything from basically today forward, and this would take council action next week. I would recommend to the council that we cut all residential water and sewer bills by 5% for the next billing cycle. That would include minimum usage people. No one will be shut off for the next 30 days. In order to reduce lobby traffic, we are going to encourage persons to pay. We are going to leave the lobby open. It is my firm belief that we say we're public, and our staff shares this. We say we're public servants. Public servants need to be there in times like these. I do not like the message that it would be sending to our public to say, well, City Hall is closed. So we are going to encourage persons to stay away unless they have an actual reason to be in here that is very, very pressing. We're going to encourage them to pay online, and we are going to institute the waiver of fees that we talked about doing, that Ms. Williams talked about doing on May 1. We're going to implement that as quickly as possible so folks can pay online. The same thing will apply to building permits. People can call in and pay over the phone or pay online. The same thing will apply to any of the permits through development services. We have, for the safety of our employees, we are wiping things down essentially continually. Both of our building techs are wiping things down and sanitizing them constantly during the day. But the windows where we have the thick bulletproof windows will be closed. Persons can still hear. We can still communicate through those. We are arranging to have some sort of a barrier put up at development services window here because that is a wide open window. We hope to have that in by close of business tomorrow where they can still communicate and see people, but there's a barrier of some sort there, perhaps a thick plexiglass barrier with a window cutout or a talk cutout. The Missouri Supreme Court has already taken their steps relative to our court. They have canceled what they refer to as court appearances through April 3rd. That will be 2 of our court dockets, so there will be the next 2 court dockets will be canceled. But operationally, court will remain open just like the city clerk's window and the utility window. Again, we can take online payments or phone-in payments at that location as well, and we'll be encouraging those. I am recommending to you all that we cancel all board and commission meetings effective immediately through March 31st and reevaluate at that time. That will cut off the pipeline from P&Z to the city council meeting of any public hearings being necessary. So we can limit the members of the public that are here. Mr. Zur will refer to the authority to be able to do that. Mr. Zur.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn. Real quickly, just dovetailing in with that, there are some unique and challenging issues with regard to public hearings and public meetings that we've been provided. Under the charter right now, Section 5.2 for the powers and duties of the city manager. The city manager is provided with administrative powers over all departments. I think unless objected to by the council, the notion would be as administrative control over all of the departments, being able to discontinue the boards and commission meetings for a month would make appropriate sense, and to cancel those under that authority. Obviously, the public hearings would not be held during this time frame. In addition, I think there's also some discussion with regard to impacts on the city council meetings themselves and involvement of the public. I'll wait to see if Mr. Fearborn wants to chime in first or if he wants me to go ahead and take that one as well.
I'd like to take the lead. Thank you, Mr. Zur. It had been my full intention to come before you tonight and suggest to you all that because we do not have to have public comments and because we do not have to have public comments, they can be waived by the council at the beginning of the meeting. And because the pipeline for public hearings is going to be cut off, so those won't be coming to you all for your next couple of meetings while we deal with this situation, it was my full intention to also recommend that the public be not allowed within the chambers because obviously it's a public meeting and they can watch it online. to fulfill that need. Mr. Zur, in his, as is usual for him, he is very detailed and somewhat zealous, has found that there may be a problem in 610-021 relative to not letting somebody in the chambers. To that end, I'm going to let him speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Fairborn. Under the sunshine laws that we are provided, the notice provisions under 610.020 provide specifically that the notice has to provide for information regarding where the meeting is to occur, time, date, and location, including the ability or the location where an individual can attend the actual meeting. So it's not just notice of how to view the meeting, but also how to attend the meeting. In light of that, Mr. Fairborn and I have had a number of opportunities to discuss it over the last couple of days. Basically, from legal's perspective, I think that it's a good thing to recommend that people stay home. In fact, I'm not so sure I would not just recommend it, but implore those individuals to stay at home. This is a fluid situation, and the CDC is making recommendations on a daily basis, which may well impact upon the number of people that would even be allowed in the council chambers. I think we will be evaluating that even up until the time of any council meeting. The result is that you may well have individuals who, if they were to come to the council in order to attend a meeting, may well be placed in separate conference rooms outside of the council chambers. Again, we're going back to the notion of the Planning and Zoning Commission boards and other commission meetings that will not be having public hearings, so it's highly unlikely that you're going to have public individuals coming in order to provide testimony at public hearings during this time frame. In fact, the goal is not to have those public hearings. I'd note that even right now down in the Missouri legislature, they're trying to address this issue. Today, we received an email from Mr. Sheets with the MML indicating that House Bill 2725 is currently being considered before the Judiciary, the Missouri House Judiciary Committee, and that bill would allow for governmental bodies to close their meetings to the public during health emergencies such as this. I don't believe we're going to be able to see that come out as quickly as our next couple of meetings, and so with that in mind, I just want you to understand that this is something that's being addressed. It's a unique and challenging situation for all of our governmental entities out there. Staff would like to be recommending that the public comment portion, and you've got authority with regard to your rules of procedure. The rules of procedure specifically outline what all is going to be going on to an agenda item in order to promote the notion of, hey, look, we really don't want to have the public health issues associated with the public being here at our council meetings. The council could consider the prospect of amending its or suspending its rules of procedure for purposes of changing the agenda items for the upcoming council meetings, thereby removing the council or public comment during the council meetings. And again, I think it's not a question of trying to not have public input. Important fact there is the public still has multiple options that they can reach out to the council and to the city in order to make sure that their views and considerations are taken into effect, and obviously would invite the public to submit via email, Facebook, or otherwise so that they can have those concerns raised at council meetings. They don't necessarily have to do that in person.
Any questions on any of those? Again, as I indicated at the beginning, the only one of these that would actually require council action is because you would be actually cutting the water and the sewer rates, and especially the sewer rates has to be done through a formalized ordinance process. And once again, along with the I-49 consultant bill, we would be asking for an emergency read on that item. But again, it would be retroactive for the entire billing cycle, so it would be in effect as of basically today when the new billing cycle started. But all the other items can be done at the staff level.
Mr. Barnes?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fairborn, I applaud your efforts, and I think it's a great idea, and I support that. A quick question with the water billing. Could we add to that, and this doesn't require council approval, I don't believe, but could we add a moratorium on shutoffs for those that get behind on their water billing?
That was item number 2, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, shutoffs will not occur for a 30-day period.
Okay.
That will bring us into line with Evergy and Inspire. So all utilities would not be shut off for a 30-day period.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Barber?
Yeah, I had a question about the meetings. it's been a long time ago, but we decided that we could do work sessions. Somebody could not attend the work session but participate via conference call. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Could we do
It's
our-
actually specifically called out for in 610-021.
Can we do our work sessions as a body? Would it be legal to do those as a conference call if that was open for people to listen in a listen-only?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
We'd still have to provide location for where they could listen to it. Sorry, we would still have to provide the location for where they could listen to it. The specific language is, for those types of meetings, they have to have the ability where the public can observe and attend the meeting, and that included with regard to the internet chat and VoIP and otherwise.
Is that something that, have you thought of, I mean, is that what,
That, it is a council consideration, sir.
okay.
And I know it's been brought up before. One of the things that I would introduce to the council as a possibility, albeit a horrid one, is if one of you come down with it and you're quarantined, would you want to be able to participate in the work sessions? Because it is a new world.
May I mean, I'd like to make a comment. I don't see why we couldn't, at least for our next couple, do our work sessions via conference instead of showing up at City Hall, have a virtual meeting, you know, through either through a computer or through a phone.
Would be easy enough to do.
Yeah, it's a conference call.
All right.
The, and Mr. Mayberry has a program called Zoom, right? That works very well for this. Yes. My technology is showing.
So let's talk a little bit about the process for public comment at our meeting. You talked about we could potentially alter the agenda to remove that from the agenda, Jonathan, is that what you said? That would have to be up to the council?
Right. Under your rules of procedure that you've adopted, you have a provision. It outlines the terms that are supposed to be included in your agenda item. And then there's a reference that says, unless objected to by a council member, the presiding officer may call for an item to be taken out of order. I think that as a council, you could kind of look at that from the same perspective and say, do we want to take it out of order? We want to remove that provision and suspend the rule as to requiring that under the terms of the agenda.
Okay. Would that take a motion at the beginning of the meeting?
I think it would at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sure, go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the next work session would be April 6th anyway. It's on the schedule, correct? 3 weeks out on a work session.
That's correct, because March 30th is fifth Monday.
Mr. Townsend?
Just so I can get it in my layman's mind, if the pipeline for public comment comes through P&Z and the different boards with respect to public hearing agenda items, things that come on the legislative council sessions, we, mayor and staff, control what goes on that agenda. Knowing what things are in the pipeline, I don't know that, but knowing those hot button things that typically get public comment, we can delay those until after this calms down to then allow that traditional process to go?
That is correct, and right now, looking at the big board in Mr. Cataret's office, the only item, and it is a really big board, the only item that would have actually been in front of the council next week, in front of planning and zoning tomorrow night for public hearing at both locations, is an incredibly minor item. We've already spoken with the individuals involved. If you've seen it on the P&Z agenda, it's actually Foxwood Springs is applying for a rezoning of a portion of their property, but it has nothing to do with a potential sale. It has nothing to do with any imminent work. They just want their homogeneous areas to have the exact same zoning.
And I only ask that or bring that up for clarification, just to make sure from a full transparency, no one is thinking that we would attempt to slip something in an opportunity where there is no public comment chance.
The public comment or the public hearing component that would have to have somebody here. we would have to post the public hearing. That's the law. So, yeah, we would never dream of doing it, and in fact, we kind of go overboard on public hearings. We have a lot of public hearings that we actually don't have to have. So.
We do, and I just wanted to make sure that that was clearly articulated, just because there's a lot of terms and legalese wording was put out there, and just for my own clarification, for those that would listen and may kind of run back through videos, realize that that would not be the case. We do have the ability to kind of, for those things that are on the big board coming forward that would traditionally get public comment interest, that would be delayed until this situation calms down, to allow the opportunity for that to be in its traditional sense. Am I correct in that?
You can get public comment from anything on any item that's on the agenda item. The question is whether or not there is a right for the public to be present for an actual hearing. That's the difference and the distinction we're making here. Any time that a public hearing would be required where testimony would be presented, that's those items that we would be able to forestall and keep from coming to the council. Obviously, anything that's on your agenda may well receive public comment through your emails or otherwise.
If the council is okay with all of these, the way we would be doing this is placing it on an ordinance for your action, item number 1 that we talked about, which is the rate cut. We would, for purposes of posterity, actually list all the items that you are doing, though, whereas in light of the recent health crisis, so that 15 years down the road, if something like this comes again, we could look back at that and kind of have it as a reference document for everything that was done, but the only action item would actually be the cut in the rates.
Okay. All right, Mr. Ullman.
Were you suggesting, to use your terminology, a bright line on these action items in reference to our stopping basically or slowing down our public attendance at city council meetings? Is there a bright line set on that, a to be determined, or was it in conjunction with the other commissions and boards as well?
Well, right now, as far as attendance at council meetings is concerned, we're a little bit handcuffed until the Missouri legislature does something. If people choose to show up, but we are imploring them not to if they don't need to be. I'm sure the mayor will be repeating that next Monday night when the agenda is waived so that public comment is removed from the agenda. It's just, in this day and age, let's try to keep people as safe as possible.
Yeah, Mr. Jacobson.
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say thank you, sir, to you and your staff for putting this together, because this is an all-encompassing, I think, and I realize it's going to change as time goes on, but this shows once again that you and your staff are out in front, and I really appreciate all the work, because this has required some thought and some diligence in order to put this together. Obviously, city council, city governments have certain legal ramifications if we don't do things the proper way, which is, they should be in there. But everything you guys have done here, I think, is really impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
We have a couple of other items
Okay.
on this particular topic, sir.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you all know that unless it's changed in the last hour, which things do, right now, Raymore Peculiar School District, I do not believe has made a decision. April 3rd? Okay, so they're matching Lee Summit. Okay, so the superintendents do talk. Cass County, Mr. Fletcher was in touch with me on Friday. Foxwood Springs is not going to allow them to have voting at Foxwood Springs, which impacts primarily our Ward 3. They were requesting that the voting be done at Centerview. And as you all know, Centerview was a little bit problematic, and so they removed one precinct from there. Now they're putting one back. There will be, Mr. Fletcher is anticipating less than a 5% voter turnout, unfortunately. I retorted with, maybe you would think about having Centerview here, or Ward 3 here, that particular precinct. He said that he is losing election judges right and left, and in fact, this may not be the only move he has to make. We could end up with just two voting locations in Raymore, the Rack, and Centerview. Mr. Icky then volunteered to be one of the election judges. Apparently in his former life, that was one of the things that he did. So just wanted to update you on the election situation and what is going on there and the school district, and thank you, sir. Another really hot topic, and I'm about to really put her on the spot here, is how are we keeping our first responders safe and what actions are being taken and what's going on from the police department level. Chief, would you mind speaking to it? Sure. Come on up.
Thank you, sir. As you know, we have been participating in every conference call, every meeting, everything down at Cass County earlier today, and then with the Mid-America Regional Council right immediately following that meeting. And part of the topic with the Mid-America Regional Council obviously was personal protective gear for first responders, both police, fire, and EMS. As well, and so they've SEMA and all the other powers that be are putting some guidelines into place for all of us to make sure that that protective gear is going to be available to folks all across the state. Obviously, everybody wants it, and it's hard to get it, and there are certain levels of protection. The N95 mask, I'm sure lots of folks have heard about, is the only mask really that people should be using. But we are working very closely, of course, with South Metro in ordering that protective gear for our folks. And we had a staff meeting last Thursday to talk to our people about those safety precautions that they need to be taking. Of course, for us, it's different, obviously, for police officers than it is for the ambulance folks, necessarily, or even the fire folks who may be able to gown up and go in, when they know they're responding on a call in which we've, been given information that individual is presenting symptoms possibly of corona. We don't have that luxury in law enforcement because we're going in on disturbance calls or stealing calls or, vehicular accidents that we would have to respond to, regardless. We have put some dispatch protocols into place as far as that just screening on the telephone when we're talking with folks that are calling in. But, we're advising our officers just to take, all of those necessary precautions if they feel like it's a situation in which they may come into contact with an individual, then, obviously we want them to put on that PPE gear before they come into contact. But we also recognize that likely we would find that out after the fact. We would have already come into contact with someone, as I said, on a disturbance call or something like that. And so we're just going to take, all the necessary precautions. We've ordered that extra gear. There is an individual at the Department of Public Safety in Jefferson City level that is our point of contact to order that gear for our folks. We've got some, obviously, and again, working very closely with South Metro. They have extra gear as well, and so we'll be partnering with them when we make those calls. But talk about
the item that South Metro's ordering, the $16,000.
The Aeroclave.
Tell them.
Yeah, I've had more conversations with Chief Stevens than probably he even wants to have, but they have ordered a really cool piece of equipment called an Aeroclave, and it's basically a Pelican case. It's like a suitcase item that they can put into an ambulance, they can put it into a car, and in about 20 minutes' time, it releases chemicals and basically autoclaves the interior of wherever you put it. It is a $16,000 piece of equipment. I'm glad that South Metro has money, but they have offered that up to us if we transport anyone in our cars that we feel like would put us at risk and all, or in our jail if we needed to aeroclave the interior of our jail or any of our cells, and have ordered the necessary chemicals that go along with that as well. And so he has offered that up to us, in addition to the N95 masks and the other things that would keep our folks safe. But absolutely, and they've done some other really cool things too. South Metro, extra cases of hand sanitizer delivered to all the schools in Raymore and things like that. That they're just making sure that they're great community partners as well with us.
And then there are the additional jail restrictions, I guess, now that you sent us.
Yeah, we, in the meeting that we were at down at the sheriff's office today, the sheriff's office is going to be taking some additional precautions, not accepting arrests just on regular municipal charges. So, we had already actually put into place some additional guidelines for our folks about signature bonding and, getting people out. We're going to attempt not to actually bring, people into custody unless it's absolutely necessary. But the county has gone ahead and taken that step to say that they won't be accepting any prisoners from us, at least in the short term. And obviously if it's a serious felony where someone is in danger, that if the person were released back out onto the street, they will accept those prisoners, but not the ordinary municipal arrests that we might be taken down to them. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I concur with you on the patrol officers having the mask, because I've heard somewhere in the country, once one gets sick, you start losing your patrol officers. You decimate the control of the police force here in Raymore if you lose 2 or 3 automatically because of you guys get sick and they got to now turn around and put everybody in quarantine. That can decimate your police department very quickly and put a lot of pressure on the city. So yes, to have those masks and to keep them as healthy as they can while they're out on patrol is very important.
Well, and obviously I was at a meeting with Chief Person and Fire Chief Sapp over in Belton, as well as Patrick Avila from the hospital, to talk about the screening procedures. And obviously the hospital has put a significant number of procedures into place about restricting points of ingress into the hospital, obviously, and we respond there, many times with arrests and, people who say that they're sick because they don't want to go to jail, so they'd rather go to the hospital. And so we work very closely with them, when we take folks in there. But we are going to take all, and we've told our officers, told our supervisors to make sure that they share with the officers that, while hand sanitizer is good in a pinch, it doesn't beat soap and water. We've asked our officers to carry a jug of water and a little bottle of soap, and, wash your hands if you come in contact, with someone who you just are concerned that they might be exhibiting any types of symptoms as well. So just, really good, hand washing habits hopefully will eliminate some of that. And we've told them to do that. Don't get in your car and contaminate your car if you feel like you've come in contact with someone. So we're just, trying to do all the things that, we can't not go, but, just try and take all the precautions that we can.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Fearborn,
That
anything
concludes
else?
staff reports tonight, sir.
All right. Anybody else have anything? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you.